It's been a while since I did some English math papers, so I thought I'd actually introduce you to how the Swedish National test in maths looks like. And I'll do these in English, and they are for 15 to 16-year-olds in Sweden. They're done as 4 papers. There's paper B, C, and D. And I'm going to go through each of those papers today. Paper A is actually an oral paper that I'm not going to go through, but I'm going to run you through how the different maths papers in Sweden works. This is an old paper from 2012-2013. It's available online for people to look at, and yeah, we'll run through how it works. You get an instruction that you can get different points for each questions. You can get E quality points, they are the lowest quality points first. You can get C quality points, which are mid points, and you can get A quality points, which are the high level points. So a question that's got points like this, 1, 1, 0, that means 1 E level, 1 C level, and 0 A level points. The time for this paper is 80 minutes for both this paper and another part C. So they would expect or recommend that you use 40 minutes on this paper and 40 minutes on the next paper. So we'll have a little look at the time and see how we do. We'll see how many minutes it takes us to do this paper. Right, let's start with question 1. This paper, no calculator is allowed. So this is just checking your basic math skills. So we start here with 2.35 minus 0.5. You can do this in your head, of course, but let's just make sure we don't make any silly mistakes and set it all up nicely with the decimal points under one another and do our subtraction. 5 minus 0 is 5. 3 minus 5 we can't do, so we borrow 1 from the 2, giving us 13 minus 5 to give us 8, and then 1 minus 0 is 1. So here we get 1.85. If we're going to calculate 8 times 0.3, well, we know that 8 multiplied by 3 is 24. So we know that 8 multiplied by 0.3 must be 2.4. We had 1 decimal place here in one of the factors, so we put in 1 decimal place in our answer. Here we have a calculation, 6 plus 4 times 3. The dot in Sweden means multiply, so this is actually 6 plus 4 times 3. Order of operation, PEDMAS, if we don't have brackets or powers, we have to do multiply first. So this will give us 6 plus 4 times 3 is 12. We have to do the multiplication first, and 6 plus 12 is 18. So we just write the answer here, 18, and that's worth, all of those questions were worth 1 equality point. Now we have a question where it says, Robin has 5 cards that show different shapes. He mixes the cards, turns them upside down, and chooses a card at random. What is the probability that he will choose a card showing a quadrilateral? Well, there are 2 quadrilaterals here. That's a 4-sided figure. We have 1 here and 1 here. So the chances of him choosing a quadrilateral if they're turned upside down is 2 chances out of how many cards did he have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2 out of 5, which is 0.4 as a decimal, which is also 40%. And you can answer any of those. Usually we answer probabilities in decimal, so I'll say the chance of that situation occurring is 0.4. The next question here is to calculate 10 squared divided by 5 squared. Well, we know that 10 squared is 10 times 10, and we're going to divide it here by 5 times 5. A couple of different ways we can do this. We know that 5 goes into 10 twice, so we can actually just shorten that expression. And here again, 5 goes into 10 twice. So instead of 10 divided by 5, we get 2 divided by 1. This gives us 2 times 2, which is 4, giving us the answer 4. Another way, of course, is to expand that out. 10 squared is 100, and 5 squared is 25. So we could also do 100 divided by 25, which is also 4, whichever method you prefer. Then we have question 6. Which of the following numbers is the best approximate value of 25.6 times 0.45? Well, we've got a number here that's a little bit less than a half. So I'd probably round that one up to a half, 0.5. It's easy to multiply by 0.5. If I'm rounding this one up to 0.5, I'd probably round this one down. 25 is not probably quite enough, but it'll be close enough. So we work out instead 25 times a half, and we know that that's 12 and a half. Half of 25 is 12 and a half. So we're looking for a number here that is around 12 and a half. 0.115 is not going to do it. 1.15, no. 11 and a half, yeah, well actually, that's pretty close. 115 definitely not, and 1,150 definitely not. So we circle the answer. Now we have the two parallelograms, and it says that they're similar, so there's a ratio, scale ratio between them. And we have to say how long side A is. Well, if we look at the long side of this smaller parallelogram, the larger was 12 and the long side on the smaller one was 4. If we divide 12 by 3, we get 4. So now we found our division ratio here. To get the smaller length, we had to divide by 3. Because the parallelograms are similar, we can get the length A by dividing 6 by 3. And that's going to give us 2. So the length of A is going to be 2, and it says here everything's written in decimeters. So we just write the answer 2 here, and they've already been very kind and given us the units. So everything in this page is just giving you one simple E point. Ready with the first page? Let's carry on now with question 8, where it's asking us to work out what is half of a third. Well, we can set it up as a fraction, and it wants you to write the answer as a fraction. So half times a third. What do we think of when we do fractions? We multiply first the top two together. 1 times 1 is 1. And then multiply the numerators together. 1 times 1 is 1. Then we multiply the denominators together. 2 times 3 is 6. So it's a sixth. And if we think about it, it's actually pretty logical. Because here if we have a third, we've split up our circle into thirds. And if we wonder how much is a half of 1/3, then we can see that it's going to be 1/6. A half of a third is going to give us 1/6. So we can also sketch and make sure that we've got the right answer there. Then it says solve the equation. X divided by 2 plus 1 equals 5. Whenever they want us to solve the equation, they want us to find out, well, what's 1x? Not half an x or 3x or 15x. They want 1x. So let's set up our equation. So we have x divided by 2 plus 1. I don't want this plus 1 here. I want to get rid of it. So let me take away 1 from the left-hand side of the equation. And equals 5. If I take away 1 from the left-hand side of my equation, I have to take away 1 from the other side of my equation. So what am I left with now? Now I know that x divided by 2, 1 minus 1 is 0, so I only have x divided by 2 on my left-hand side, equals 5 minus 1, which is 4. If I now know that half of x is 4, I can multiply both sides of my equation by 2 to find out what the whole of x is. Because 2x divided by 2, that will give me just x on my left-hand side. And 4 times 2 is 8. So I get that x equals 8. Now we have a little pattern. How many degrees does the ring have to be rotated around the middle point P so that the pattern will coincide with the original pattern? State the smallest number of degrees. Okay, well, let's say that we're going to split this shape like this. We need to find a new pattern where it goes black, white, black, grey, grey, grey. Here we have black, white, black, grey, grey, grey. So here's our pattern here. And then it continues here, black, white, black, grey, grey, grey. So if we draw around midpoint P here, we can see that this circle is split up into 3 different sections. And we know that every section, a whole circle, is a 360-degree rotation. And we're splitting up this circle into 3 different sections. And if we twist this circle around here to this point here, we'd get it where the pattern is continuing. So we have 360 divided by 3. Short division, start from the left-hand side. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. And 0 divided by 3 is 0. So it gives 20. Then we have question 11. And it says, which number is the smallest? Circle in your answer. Well, here we have a number that's bigger than 3, because it's 3 2/3. Here's pi, which we know is 3.14, so that's also bigger than 3. Here's the number 3, so that at the moment is our smallest one. Here we have 10 divided by 3. Well, that's going to be 3 whole and 1/3, so that's bigger than 3. So we don't want that, and we don't want that, and we don't want that. And now we have the square root of 8. Well, we know that the square root of 9 is 3. So the square root of 8 must be less than 3. So we can cross that one out and circle square root of 8. We don't have to know exactly what the answer is. It just said which number is the smallest, and circle your answer. Now we have to work out how many degrees is the angle A. Well, if we're really good at geometry, we know that this opposite angle outside the triangle is actually the sum of both of those together. So we could take directly that 2A equals 70 degrees. So that divide both sides by 2 to get what 1A is. And then we're dividing both sides of our equation by 2. 2A divided by 2 gives us A here. And 70 degrees divided by 2 gives us 35 degrees. So we say that the answer is 35 degrees. Another way of doing it is, if this angle here is 70, we know that all angles in a straight line add up to be 180. So the angle here on the inside of the triangle must be 180 degrees minus 70 degrees, which is 110 degrees. When we have that this angle is 110, we know that these two angles must add up to be 70, because A plus A, all the angles in a triangle have to add up to be 180. So A plus 110 degrees must equal 180 degrees. So we get that 2 lots of A equals 180 degrees minus 110 degrees. Subtract 110 from both sides. So we get that 2A equals 70 degrees. So 1A must equal 35 degrees. So there are a couple of different methods of doing this, but you get the same answer. And in all of these very first questions, it was again just E points. But now when we got to this rotation question, there was actually 2 C points available for that one. Finding the square root of the smallest number, that the square root of 8, that would give you 1 C point as well. And finding that the angle A is 35 degrees gives you 2 C quality points as well. Now we have a couple of quick fraction questions. And it says, write the numbers that are missing in the boxes so that the equalities are correct. Okay, so we have some fractions here. What do we know about getting the answer 1 if we've got fractions? Well, if we have 1/4, we know that we actually have to add 3/4 to that to get the number 1. But we don't actually have quarters here, we actually have eighths. So how could we change? We know that this has to be equivalent fraction to 3/4, but we actually want eighths down here. Well, if we expand this fraction by multiplying both the numerator and the denominator by 2, we'd get in the denominator here 4 times 2. That would give us 8. 3 times 2 gives us 6. So 1/4 plus 6/8, which is the equivalent fraction of 3/4, must give us the answer 1. So that one's fairly easy. Now we also have an addition down here where we have 1/3 plus something giving us the answer 1. But we know that 1/3 plus 2/3 gives us the answer 1. But we don't have a 2 in the numerator here. We have an 8. So we have to again transfer 2/3 into an equivalent fraction where we get an 8 in the numerator. How can we do that? Well, if we expand this fraction by multiplying both the numerator and the denominator by 4, we would get 8 in the numerator. If we multiply the numerator by 4, we have to multiply the denominator by 4, and that would give us 8/12. So there we've filled in the fractions. In the top one we would get 6/8, and in the bottom one we would get 8/12, and both of these fractions would give us the answer 1 when we did the addition. Okay, you know the average age of 3 adults. Which are 2 of the following questions? And they're helping you here. They're telling you 2 of the following questions. Can you then answer correctly? Circle the 2 alternatives. Okay, so we don't actually know how old they are, but let's assume that they are 18. Let's take some really easy numbers here. 20 and 22. Why did I choose those numbers? Yeah, because if we took the average age of them, we'd have 20, 40, 60. We'd have 60 divided by 3. The average age of these 3 people would be 20. Do we know how old each of these persons are? No, absolutely not, because we actually have not. We don't know the age of them at all. I'm just taking a totally wild random guess here. Would we know the average age of these people 2 years ago? Well, yeah, we would, because that must be that they would all have been 18 2 years ago. Let's think about that. They would have been 16 and 18 and 20, all divided by 3, which would give us 54, all divided by 3, which would give us 18. So 2 years ago, the average age of these people is going to be 2 years less than it is now. So yes, we do know that. Even if we don't know the age of the people, whatever the numbers are, this is actually going to be true. Do we know what the average age of 2 of the people is? No, we actually don't know anything. These, again, just wild guesses. We don't know anything about the average age of 2 of the people. But do we know what the total age of these people are? Well, yes, we do. Because we know that if we were to add all of the, if we were to take the average age of the people and multiply it by the number of people, we would actually get how old all of them were together. So if we took the average age and multiplied it by the number of people, we would definitely be able to find out the total age. Question 15. Simplify this expression as far as possible. Well, we would have 3x plus x divided by x. 3x plus x is 4x, all divided by x. X divided by x cancels, so we get the answer 4. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to think we have 3x plus x divided by x. This is a little bit riskier, but it's still possible to do this. We have x here and an x there and an x there. So we could actually rewrite that expression as x divided by, multiplied by 3 plus 1 divided by x, which would give us that the x's cancel, and our final expression would be 3 plus 1, which would be 4. And I think these are the last 2 questions. Calculate the value of the expression a divided by b minus c. They're telling you that a is 8 times 10 to the 7, b is 2 times 10 to the 4, and c is 8 times 10 squared. Let's start with, well, we can write everything up. A is 8 times 10 to the power 7 divided by 2 times 10 to the power 4 minus 8 times 10 squared. We can do the division part straight away. We can't do the subtraction when we've got powers until we've actually converted it to normal numbers. So the first thing we need to work out is 8 times 10 to the 7 divided by 2 times 10 to the 4. 8 divided by 2 is 4, so that one's quite easy. 10 to the 7 divided by 10 to the 4 is the same as 10 to the 7 minus 4 minus 8 times 10 squared. So we get here 4 times 10 to the power 7 minus 4 is 3 minus 8 times 10 squared. 10 squared is 100, so we get minus 800. So here we get 4,000, and we have to convert to real numbers here to calculate this one. 4,000 minus 800 is 3,200. So the answer here is 3,200. If you feel a little bit unsure about how to do this with the powers, you should know that now when you're 15, 16, of course. But it is possible to actually convert this into real numbers as well. What is 8 times 10 to the 7? Well, that's the same as 80 million. Divided by 2 times 10 to the 4. That's the same as 20,000. We're right. We can think of this as being the same as 8,000 times 10,000 up here, and this one as being 2 times 10,000 in the denominator. 10,000 divided by 10,000 is 1, and then we get 8,000 divided by 2, which is 4,000. And then we would subtract 4,000 minus, so here we're saying that we're working out A divided by B. So A divided by B is 4,000, and now we're going to work out A divided by B minus C equals 4,000 minus 800, and would also get 3,200. If you use this method, you'd probably get your C points, but you probably wouldn't get your A points. You'd probably need to have this type of method first to get that. Right, now we're on the last question here in this paper. It says solve the equation 2 multiplied by x plus 1 equals 5 minus 2x and show your solution in the box. Okay, so here's our initial expression equals 5 minus 2x. Let's work on the right hand side of the equation first, because we've got brackets here and we know that we need to expand those. So the first thing we do is multiply everything outside the bracket by everything that's inside. 2 times x will give us 2x, and then we have to multiply the 2 by plus 1. 2 times plus 1 is plus 2, right? And we actually haven't done anything just yet with the expression on the right hand side. So our equation is now 2x plus 2 equals 5 minus 2x. Well, we'd like all our x's on one side, so let's just add 2 to the left-hand side of the equation, to the left-hand side of the equation. If we do that to the left-hand side of the equation, we have to add 2x to the right-hand side of the equation too. And what do we get then? Well, on the left-hand side, we now get 2x plus 2x. Well, that's 4x. We still have the plus 2 on this side. And then on this side, we get 5 minus 2x plus 2x means that that's gone to 0 now. 2x minus 2x is nothing. So we now have a much simpler equation with 4x on the left-hand side and just numbers on the right. So our final step here would be to take away 2 from both sides of the equation. If I take away 2 on this side, I'll get rid of this plus 2 here. So I have to do the same thing on the right-hand side as well. So now on the left-hand side of my equation, I now have 4x. 2 minus 2 has gone to 0, equals 5 minus 2, which is 3. So now I know that 4 lots of x equals 3, but I still haven't found out what 1 lot of x is. But if I divide both sides of my equation by 4, and note that I underline here to make sure I've done the same thing to both sides. 4x divided by 4 gives me 1 lot of x here, and 3 divided by 4 is the fraction 3/4, which is also 0.75. And you can either answer in fraction form here or decimal form here. It's easy to leave it in fraction form, so I'd probably do that. Yeah, so in 16 minutes we're ready with the whole of the first maths paper for 15, 16-year-olds, Swedish National test. But this is the easiest paper that they have, the non-calculator paper. So I'll give you some other introductions to some of the other Swedish National tests, and you can see what you think about them. Thanks, best of luck.